Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So my next interview is with Pedro Cos, and we talk about his new film, Rebel Hearts. And you're going to want to check out the website. I'm going to shout that out right now, rebelheartsfilm.com. Sign up for the newsletter there. There's an impact campaign coming of a sort. And you're going to want to see this film. It's beautiful. It's funny. It's musical. It's an argument for the arts. It's a meditation on the arts. It's a meditation on change, as Pedro says. We had a blast. And honestly, for me, this is a conversation, and some of you might not find this hard to believe, but this is a conversation I could have had for 3 or 4 hours. No joke. Pedro and I were, I hope he feels the same way. We're on a bit of a roll. And this is a film about the institution, and frankly, all institutions. It's about the Catholic Church. It's about rocking the boat. It's about, to quote, I guess a cardinal or maybe some journalists, it's about an unruly flock. This is, as Pedro says, this is about the unique, it's about the powerful, and it's about the unexpected. It's also about a pop artist by the name of Corita Kent, who you're going to want to find out more about as well. It's about patriarchy and reform. It's about pushing back against the status quo and why that matters. And it's, we live in this, it seems to me we live in this world and this universe that we love to polarize, right? Up, down, forwards, backwards, positive, negative, and so on. And for Pedro, I'm not sure that 2 + 2 always equals 4 when it comes to art, when it comes to narrative. And I think that the Immaculate, or the sisters, as you're going to find out more about them, and there's many of them who came together in a very deeply relational, intimate, collaborative way, and they created something significant in this community, and where they made some really tough choices and created a whole movement, frankly, and spoke into education and frankly the way systems actually can work, and frankly, at the risk of being a little bit too prescriptive, should work. So I just was thrilled not only to meet Pedro, but to see the film. It was at Sundance, and Pedro's experience at Sundance virtually was great by the sounds of it, which bodes well for film festivals in the future. This, this film's about oppression, and it's about societal discourse and about the power triangle. I mean, have I got your attention yet? It's time to I hope, not only listen to the podcast, but also to watch the film. So check out the website again, for sure, and sign up for their newsletter there to learn more about it, rebelheartsfilm.com. And if you landed on this interview through Spotify or iTunes, which you probably did, check more out about us. You can do that on Acast. You can also leave us a review on iTunes. We'd really appreciate that. The more reviews we get, the better. If you found this interview, Pedro and I, and the film through YouTube, sign up for our YouTube page. We don't have a lot of followers there, and we'd love to get to 1,000 in the not so distant future. And what else? Sign up for our newsletter too, Face to Face. We only send out about 6 a year. And check out on Acast how many interviews are there on iTunes or Spotify. We're coming up on 460 interviews. But don't go anywhere, please. Listen in, lean in. I think you're gonna laugh out loud. You're gonna have a few wonderful, I hope, takeaways as well. And I'm really looking forward to part 2 with Pedro down the road. Pedro Cos talking about his beautiful and important, compelling, and fun, joyful new film. Protest as Joy. Protest as joy. What does that even mean? You're going to have to watch the film and listen to the podcast to find out. But Pedro Cos coming right up, talking about his new film, Rebel Hearts. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by a very special guest here with us today, all the way from Sundance, the Sundance Film Festival. We have Pedro Cos here to talk about his new film, Rebel Hearts. Pedro, thanks. Well, about his film and his sugar addiction, I think. But Pedro, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, David. It's so exciting to be here.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on Face to Face. Hey, tell me what's the Sundance Festival experience been like for you this year? And by the way, hey, before you even answer, congratulations on the film. I loved it. It's interesting, it's fun, it's absurd, it's so informative, and it's a delightful historical and yet a piece, and yet so relevant. So well done. Thank you for Rebel Hearts.
Wow, thank you. It's all going to go downhill from here.
That's right.
No, this is really beyond our dreams and and expectations. We are so thrilled to be a part of Sundance. We are so incredibly honored to be amongst a group of extraordinary films. And yeah, and the team has been so through the moon about the reception so far, and how people have been inspired and really taken with this story, which in a way, I guess, is a great validation that yeah, we weren't crazy. When we came across this is really something really unique and powerful, and unexpected in many ways. And so I think we're excited to be here. And Sundance has been great. I mean, it's very different from the snowy sidewalks of Park City.
Right.
I haven't slipped and fell, fell on my ass yet, trying to do that. But it's been wonderful. And one of the great, listen, I definitely miss the in-person. But I miss the
How could
in-person
you not?
experience about everything. I miss hugs in general, but I think one of the amazing things about the Sundance experience this year, and to really give credit to the whole Sundance team, starting with Kim Yutani and Tabitha Jackson, is the whole issue of accessibility. Making this Sundance accessible to people around the country and around the world. I've had people from all over the country, reach out and say how much they love the film, and that's been really great. It's in a way, it's a more democratic audience in a certain way, and
Interesting. Yeah.
it's
What have the Q&As been like? Pretty engaging,
yeah.
more wide reaching?
Yeah, for sure. More wide reaching, and that's also, I think, it's given the opportunity to people who would never have been able to go to Park City in the middle of Sundance, to
For sure.
actually have the experience. Talking to a lot of first timers who have been really enjoying the festival, not only the films but all the different panels and experiences that are afforded. And I don't know if you've been in the New Frontiers virtual lounge. I mean, it's really extraordinary what they pulled off, and so
Yeah. Well,
I'm impressed.
yeah, that's great. I mean, what a real thumbs up for an online experience. I mean, I'm with you. I miss, as was it Ray Stantz in Ghostbusters that said actual physical contact. I kind of miss that, and just hanging out, and what do I mean kind of miss it? I really miss it. So, and there's something about the buzz of a festival, right?
Absolutely.
For me as a podcaster and journalist, I'm usually running from one interview to the next, hoping and praying that I'm not going to be late. But there's just something really wonderful about that, and so it's really good to hear that Sundance has been able to create that kind of experience for you guys. And again, I just wanted to say congrats on the film, and hey, let's get a shout out. Rebelheartsthefilm.com, is that right?
Yes, rebelheartsfilm.com.
Yeah, rebelheartsfilm.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You're going to find out more about the film there. Lots of information. So someone says, tell us about the film. I mean, I've got so many notes. I've got so many questions. So many favorite moments and lines. I mean, couldn't we talk about this film as art and about art, and it's about religion and faith and social justice? how do you describe it? I don't want an elevator speech, but give me the substance behind what Rebel Hearts is for you.
Yeah, well, on the surface, I'll give you the 1-2 line elevator
Yeah, totally.
description. Which Rebel Hearts tells the story of the incredible Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, who were a Los Angeles order of nuns, who in the very well educated group of extraordinary women who in the 1960s began to reform, really being called by the Second Vatican Council, and in doing so, sort of drew the wrath of the very conservative archbishop and the patriarchy of the church here in Los Angeles, but really stood up for what they were doing and their reforms and what they believed in, leading to sort of fireworks and sort of like created ripples that actually are still being felt to today. It's a film about, really for me, it's about so many things, as you really tapped into. It's a meditation on change and how change is extraordinarily difficult and hard and arduous and work. It is a film about community, what it means to be a person of conscience as part of a community. Is really about a story of education and how to find empowerment via education, how to be empowered by others. It is a story about women finding, and it's extraordinary about these women who found their voice and stood up for what they believe in. And it's a story of the hard choices that we are faced, through life, and um, how do we face the obstacles that are put before us, and create new opportunities and beyond. It is a story about art, and how to communicate via art. It is a story about being a part of the world and how to be allies in movements. It's the story of movements, and how they keep going and changing, going back to change. I think this is a it is really of that is the constant in our life, is change.
Pedro, I don't know if we need to do any more of an interview. I mean, I think you pretty much covered it all. It's fantastic. I love it. I love that you say it's a meditation on change. What a beautiful expression. It's a great title for a piece of poetry, maybe, or a book, perhaps. But isn't to some degree, I think, I've been working kind of on behalf of the global South and international development and social justice issues for a long time. I'd like to argue, in a way, or just even say, I think all great film, all great storytelling is a meditation for change of one kind or another. So you don't have to peel back too many layers. So yeah, beautiful thought. I love how Helen said, I think it was Helen, clearly we were in a boat that needed to be rocked.
Yep, Helen Kelly. Amazing.
So talk to me a little bit about that. Maybe even, I don't know, how autobiographical is this? Are you a boat rocker? Are you a rebel heart as well? Yeah.
I think we all are rebel hearts if we're posed with the choices sometimes that they were faced. I grew up in Brazil. I'm Catholic, um, and I it's also one of the things I didn't mention is it's a film about the structures that govern our lives, right?
Institutions,
The
right?
institutions and the structures that govern our lives, and how we interact with them, and how we sometimes try to change them from within, and sometimes we're not successful in that. And going back to my story, I grew up Catholic in Brazil, and I say that the battle lines of the conservative and progressive sides of Catholicism run right through me, in terms of what my family, my community, and myself. Growing up as a gay man in a Catholic country, and then in a Latin community, which was Catholic. It was very interesting to see the sort of dueling sides of Catholicism play out, and you feel that your identity and many times is at stake. And also that feeling of being an outsider within an institution that says is says that your very existence is wrong.
Right.
um, but one of the things that was really, for me, growing up, is that my parents, and Helen Kelly, by the way, is in the same boat as I am, and um, I that is one of the things that I fell in love with, most about, was just sort of their perspective on it all. It was the ability to separate faith and the institution.
Hmm.
That the institution is an institution that was created by men and has been maintained by men for millennia, a couple of millennia to be exact. Uh, um, and it is, like all men, it is fallible, it is sinful, it is corrupt, as we are so well aware. But at the same time, I think these extraordinary women were able to discern, to go beyond that, see beyond imagine beyond the institution, what the faith was really calling them to, them to do, and to actually to put out in the world. And going back to what you're saying, is about justice, right? About compassion, about, to them, how to best live the gospel, which is, the values of compassion and forgiveness and of love, and of empowering everyone to fulfill, to be the best that they can be, and to live in harmony and peace as a society. And that's what they still fight for to this day.
There's a, help me out here, Pedro. There's a, where is it? There's a sign behind one of the women. Passion is the very fact of God and man. I just thought that was really fascinating. It sounds like one of the old church fathers or something,
Yes.
But and I love the other protest sign. I'm sure it was quite intentional on your part. And near the beginning of the film, somebody was walking with a sign that said, "I like God." I just thought that was hilarious.
Yes.
That here they were pushing for issues that matter,
Mhm.
but oh, hey, to your point about the separation of sort of, being faithful, I suppose, and being institutional, right?
Yes, exactly. And as Helen Kelly says, which is actually not in the film, but one of the beautiful lines that I mean, that's the thing. Like, you could just sit down and watch her interview and just be blown away by,
Oh,
and
I bet.
um, um, because nuns take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And the patriarchy of the church kept saying them. That's why they were termed "quote unquote" rebels, because they were disobedient to the institution, to the patriarchy, to the cardinal of Los Angeles. And it's it's another meditation on obedience, because what
Mm.
Helen Kelly says is that obedience is to follow what the Spirit is calling you to.
Hmm.
Is obedience to a higher power,
Mm.
a power that is transcends humanity, which is the power of God, as and the gospel. And that was what they were being obedient to, not obedient to a structure or to a man, but obedient to the values that they were taught and that they held.
And Pedro, it's fascinating too. I mean, the time that all this was going down is just incredible. I mean, it's almost insensitive to say that it was a rich moment in history. It wasn't rich. It was just, I suppose, rich for a historian or rich for a storyteller, I guess. It was a crazy time in history.
Yeah.
Completely unjust. I mean, one of your earlier films, is it Bending the Arc? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a little Martin Luther King reference there, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, you're a man of social justice, without a doubt. All that was going on at the time was bending away from that arc. It seems,
Yeah, and I think it was the awakening that things were not right.
right,
As Helen Keller says, the boat needed to be rocked. I mean, in terms of so many things, in terms of race relations in the United States and beyond, in terms of what the Vietnam War, in terms
right.
of labor, from
Oh, the sisters had it all covered, man. They really did.
yeah, exactly. So in terms of hunger around the world, even to those basic things, that the dignity of each person, I think that's one of the things that um, they were already doing that work even before Vatican II, and they were when Vatican II, which is the Second Vatican Council, which was a council called by the Catholic Church to reform its practices. It happened in the early 60s, and it really called the church to, as they said, open its doors and windows and to be a part of the world. When that happened, when those decrees began to come out of the Second Vatican Council, these women were so moved at what they felt, so what they were already doing in many ways at the college and at their convent, was something that was being asked by what they thought that was the higher authority, and then began to do that. They began to move to be a part of the world, even in more engaging ways, to take part in social movements like Patrice Underwood, as a sister who went and marched in Selma with Martin Luther King, to open the college for anti-war movements of the time. And I guess they took the words a little bit too fervently, because I guess that that caused the patriarchy to be like, oh well, actually never mind,
Well,
don't.
for what's fascinating to me is they didn't even seem to give it a second thought that their faith was all about action.
Mm-mm.
And here we got this cardinal, and I don't even want to use his name, frankly, because I'm not a fan. But anyway, we got this cardinal who's all about power, about words, who supposedly is theologically trained, and yet another father calling him out as just merely a businessman, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I think, on all the Cardinal McIntyre's, and I'll say his name.
You could say his name. You're the director. You're allowed.
I also think, it's not that it was just his fault. I mean, I think
Right.
he is emblematic of an institution that was that really was scared. They were afraid.
They were afraid.
They were afraid of what change would do to the, in a way, to this institution that they, in a way, had worked so hard to preserve, not even because the institution is centuries and centuries old, but they were afraid that these changes were going to undermine the faith and Catholicism and everything that they were taught. Because you have to understand that Cardinal McIntyre was not only a runner in Wall Street before he became a priest, but when he went into seminary, he was deeply, there was a very anti-intellectual bent at that time in the 1920s in the United States. The curia, or the priests, when they were trained at that time, it was very much follow the book. These are the rules. They're black and white. Everything falls under those, and it is your role and your duty to pass that on. And then the way to salvation, as that they were taught, is through a very rigid power structure. And so, like, it's God to the Pope to the cardinals to the bishops and it's a very patriarchal power structure triangle.
Sure.
That, like, you fit in a certain place in the grand scheme of things.
Don't rock the boat.
And don't rock the boat. You have to follow that, because that is your way to salvation. I
mean, these guys were so afraid, and I know it's easy to look back, and I'm not really poking fun, I suppose. Maybe on another day I'll do that. But near the end of the film, one of the things, they fire altar. What's the headline? Altar girls fired.
Fired, right?
Like, honestly, I mean, it was a laugh out loud moment for me. I mean, the absurdity, really, you got to take it out on the altar girls now.
Yeah.
Like holy cow, this is crazy talk. Like, you guys are clearly scrambling and have no idea what to do.
Exactly. And it is comical, because it is surreal. It's like, look at the world around you, look at what's going on, and at the same time they're trying to like maintain some, a certain level of the status quo that is
Sure.
no longer relevant
Right.
to the world that they live in. And it is really, it provides for a lot of humorous moments, because it's like, really, are you that out of touch with what is going on?
It's the kind of thing
Um,
you say as a filmmaker, you probably say all the time as a documentarian, you can't write this stuff,
no,
right?
you
It's this is,
not.
this is too
Yeah,
good, right?
yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
is this a story? I certainly didn't know this story. Is this, and I'm not a Catholic, is this a story that Catholics would not have heard before, probably, and unless they were sort of on the inside?
Um, this is this is a story that was, I think, that's been really forgotten, and unless you lived through that time in Los
Right,
Angeles and the United, and
right.
the United States. But it's one that actually was really, I didn't know about it. And a lot of most of the Catholics that I know don't know about it either. But I think is one that, in the mid '60s to late '60s, when they were making headlines, and they were making headlines, and all around the world, it was very much kind of part of um, uh, part of the fabric of what people of the social discourse that was happening. I mean, I spoke with a sister recently, a nun, who also loved the film, and she was saying that when she entered an order, in the mid '60s, um, some cardinal came in from from Rome, Italian cardinal, and says, "And don't do what those Immaculate Hearts are doing. It's a disgrace," or
Right.
But that was what, how she heard, because she heard it from someone within the hierarchy of the church. But they were, like a lot of the archival that you see the film, we actually found it within in sort of the big news sources. NBC, ABC, CBS, and BBC all were doing pieces on what was happening here in Los Angeles at that time.
I just and I want to hear about Karita, who's the artist, and she seemed to be, well, at least the way you present her a little bit in the film, she seemed quite broken by the whole sort of experience, and maybe really saddened or disappointed. I would say, and how could you not be? And don't want to give away too many spoilers about the film, but I think words like scandalous were used
Yeah.
about her. Mary's Day.
Yes.
I could hear them saying this is an outrage. We've got to put an end to this now. I think pornographic was another word. Um, we look back on that and I think most of us, not all, of course, most of us just shake our heads and go, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
Like it's so easy for us to see. And clearly, it was easy for these sisters to see. How come Cardinal McIntyre and these other, mostly men, I suppose, couldn't see it? Or was it they just wouldn't see it? Any insight on that?
Um, I don't think they would ever be able to see it, because to them it was just purely wrong. And I think one of the ways they saw it is that they are violating their vows of
Mm,
obedience.
right, right.
And
You're breaking your promise you made to the institution.
exactly. And so it was, again, whenever you stray from that path of that triangle, that power structure where you fit in, that is a no-no. That is, an act of going against the hierarchical authority. Was almost like an act of blasphemy. Was heresy. And that's what it was viewed. I mean, through the most conservative uh, perspective at that time. If in the opening montage, you get a taste of the societal discourse that was happening at
Right.
that time. And you have, people on the street, that the conservative Catholics that were saying, they do take vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience, and then they're destroying all three of those vows. And it was almost shock and horror from that perspective, because they were fraying from what was expected of them. But I think at the same time, it was a time of great change, and they
Mm.
were inspired. They, first of all, I think one of the things to really note is they were the most extraordinarily well educated group of women and group of people, period. I mean, how lucky would I have been to be able to go to the Immaculate Heart College, a
Right.
college that was fostering not only change, but they were fostering learning to heights, and experimentation to heights that we really would love to see it in all our educational institutions. They were This order would send the sisters that were going to be professors at the college to get masters and PhDs at the leading institutions of the country. Anita Caspary, the Mother General, had got her PhD from Stanford in literature.
Not
Therese,
not theology, literature.
not theology,
Fantastic. Love it.
literature. Lenore Dowling, who we meet, is the first person we meet in the beginning of the film, has and a Master of Fine Arts from Columbia University in filmmaking, and the USC as well. I mean, they all went to the leading institutions, and many times they were not only the only nun in those institutions, they were the only women, because they were getting PhDs. But to them, they were like, well, we are called to be great educators, and to be great educators, we must also have the proper training ourselves. And so they sent out the sisters, and they knew well. I mean, and this is talked about in the interviews, that I think they knew, because they some of them talk about the price of education as you begin to ask questions. But to them, it was important to educate.
Which would be a no-no to most institutions, right?
Right. But to them, they think, you know, they wanted to teach their mostly female students, their mostly women students, to be critical thinkers, to be leaders, not, to go and be a part of the world in a way that it was equal. There was a student that talked about saying, like, I didn't know about. She was a lot less aware about the patriarchal world and the misogyny that existed and still exists in the world, until she left Immaculate Heart, because it was
Wow.
such an empowering place. And then when they left, they were really kind of faced with those huge obstacles that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's story speaks so loudly about. But it was really the sort of it was not they were educating their women students to be leaders, and they sure became leaders.
So good. There's a moment, and I can't remember if it was Helen or if it's Anita or who it is, but somebody talks about this notion, and it's not a notion, it's a practical action, making others' issues your own.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other subtext for the film, for Rebel Hearts, it seems to me, this idea that, stepping into somebody else's shoes and saying, you matter just as much as I do. In fact, maybe you matter more than I do. I'm responsible for you too. How can I help? How can I come alongside? Again, I'm astounded that, this group of women, who were willing to almost make a mockery of the institution, were really speaking truth, capital T, all the way.
Yes.
It's just, it's astounding because it's beautiful, I think. And they're so, what's the other line at the end of the film about, if you fit in, you're not a prophet?
They didn't fit in. Exactly. That was it. And one thing to highlight is they did all that with a lot of joy, and they are also at the same time hysterically funny.
It's hysterically funny. And I love this, the way, oh man, I hope everybody sees this film, by the way. Protest as joy. what a beautiful place to I mean, talk about a timely, what's the word, prescient moment
Yeah,
in history.
yeah,
uh, this notion of protesting with joy and saying, hang on a minute here, something's not right, but we're going to maybe enjoy this together as a community while we push back against the status quo. That's
exactly.
amazing.
That the protest with joy is a lot more, and I'm paraphrasing, is a lot more likely to create change and less backlash. Um,
So good.
and yeah, I mean, they did it. They were so, and they stuck together, and they
And I love that about the film. I love the what appears to be the camaraderie, the community, the sense of collaborative pushback. It's just great. Hey, you're the artist, the filmmaker, the storyteller. How did you resonate with Karita? And talk to me as we kind of sadly wrap up our conversation here in a few minutes. Somebody in the film said humility as a way to truth. What about art? What about storytelling as a way to truth? And forget about the PhD in theology. You get a PhD in literature. You're gonna right.
exactly, yeah, get a PhD or whatever degree in what you feel called to do. I think that was what their motto was, is find what your calling is and follow that. And uh, Karita was, in a way. Here's the wonderful thing. Karita is an icon of pop art that I think um, needs to be recognized as one of the great contemporary artists of the second half of the 20th century
So amazing.
period. And who's overdue for that recognition, I might add. But Karita became the icon of pop art that she became because of this community, because
Mm.
they saw that talent in her and um, encouraged her to pursue that, to go and get the degrees and the education, and also became famous and known because of they began, like, her colleague in the art department, Sister Mary Magdalene. This is also something that's not in the film. It should be in the documentary about the Credo. Another extraordinary story that it should be and has to be told.
Is this
Um,
is this Rebel Hearts Part Two?
no, it will be its own thing, and I'm excited for the filmmaker that will be, whoever that will be,
There you go.
to be telling
Nice.
that story. But Karita, colleague and the previous head of the art department, Sister Magdalene Mary, began taking her work around to galleries all around the country, and really raised Karita's profile. And it was and Sister Mary Magdalene apparently was one of the most colorful people you'll ever meet. And anyways, the stories are notorious about Sister Mary Magdalene, and she was a riot. And Karita, very extroverted and always, commanded the tension in the best way possible, and lovely, and all that. But there's so many stories about these type of women in this community. But Mary Magdalene started taking Karita's prints around, and Karita started getting attention for her work, and that's really how she became that story. And she was really dialoguing. Her works were very much a commentary on and a reflection on what was going on at the time, and the from the more joyous reflections on her faith and faith in general, of to and how you see the extraordinary things in everyday life. I think that
Mm,
was one of the,
good.
like, the beauty. And it's the holy is not in sort of the, in the altar only. It's on everyday life, hence
Yeah.
the
It's a
wonder bread.
sacred presence. What's in
Exactly.
in the moment. Yeah, it's great. I love that.
Exactly. And find the special in everything, in the quotidian. And and also began seeing what things were really wrong about the world. And from the Vietnam War, she her late 60s prints are really sort of emblematic, of the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. I mean, one of her prints was hanging in Congressman John Lewis's office.
Wow.
They um, they really sort of capture that spirit and of change, and she really communicated with a very wide audience through that.
It's amazing. I love the idea. Well, the art as truth. I mean, it's
Yes,
just to me, or art as a meditation on change. To borrow your
exactly.
phrase, right?
And we had a saying in our edit room, which was, "What would Karita do?"
Right.
Whenever we were sort of faced with an
I'm
obstacle.
already wearing the bracelet, man. I've already
Yeah.
got the bracelet. Yeah,
What would Karita do? And they really took that to heart. I mean, and in a way, how to think outside the box and how to tell
Mm,
the story. Hence the animation, hence the motion graphics.
sure.
I think we were really inspired by that and try to
Pedro,
be.
I'm inspired. I mean, I love the conversation. I could honestly could go 3 or 4 more hours without missing a beat. I'd probably have to go get some more of my sugar-free pop here, but other than that, I could easily go. The idea there's so much we haven't touched on. Mary's Day. I'd never heard of Mary's Day before. I mean, how fascinating and wonderful, and I think it's a festival I would have wanted to go to. Those kind of
Yes,
things.
well, their Mary's Day, yes, because
Yeah, that's right.
they took an old festival that was
Yeah,
really, as Miriam Sharple says, was dreadful or really boring, and they turned it into
turned
something
it.
that was about opening to the world and celebrating and dancing and
They found the joy in the mundane, right? But
yeah,
I love to, my background academically is philosophy, as my listeners will know, and and I like to sort of say that from time to time, just to remind people that I've, because I love it. I have this deep passion, and the notion of new ideas. What is it? New ideas as irritants is
yes.
just, that comes out in the film as well. It's just such a delightful phrase. It's a delightful thought experiment, and something I think we all should be reflecting more on, and in a variety of ways. So, thanks for that reminder on so many levels.
Thank you so much. It's a joy. It's a really
So,
for
last question, and I promise the last one because I got about a dozen more easily just on the tip of my tongue. What's the call to action other than getting out to see the film, Rebel Hearts, getting to the website, signing up for the newsletter? What's an immediate call to action?
an immediate call to action, I think, is there's so many, but be a part of the world, engage, don't uh, find what your calling is. And this is what I learned from the Immaculate Hearts, because they're no longer sisters, but I learned from them is to find what you're called to do and find a community of people that you feel are kindred to your calling, and try to create, bring love and change to the world, and positivity, and do it with joy, because um, that's the most important way to do it. And I think that's what it was a joyful process of making this film. If there were many obstacles, it was very, it was difficult, like every project is. But at the core of it all, like with the collaborators, the extraordinary collaborators that I had, from Shawnee Isaac Smith, who began documenting these women over 20 years ago,
Over 20 years ago.
and really stuck with it, and
It's
was
remarkable.
just remarkable. And like, we're all here because of Shawnee, and so grateful for her perseverance, for her generosity and her joy, and her for sticking with the story, despite like extraordinary obstacles. And
Perseverance, generosity, and joy. Those are pretty good ideas to sort of wrap up our conversation today. I hope we can do a part two, but the website is rebelheartsfilm.com. Make sure you check it out. Film is hopefully coming soon to at least a digital theater near you. And
absolutely.
yeah, and if you like what we're doing here on Face to Face, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube, or leave us a review on iTunes. Pedro, what a pleasure chatting with you today. It is really, honestly, Yeah, so much more to chat about. Looking forward to your next film, and congratulations. We've been talking with Pedro Costa today here on Face to Face about his important and beautiful and joyful new film, Rebel Hearts.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a lot of fun being on this podcast.